Hey, welcome back to Affiliated. We've got a great episode here with Ian. We just wrapped it up. He covers some great things about the fixed water campaigns and why that went viral, why those ads work, how to hire copywriters. He's sold hundreds of millions of dollars through his copy. He knows what he's talking about. Let's dive in. Well, Ian, thanks for joining me, man. I've got to say that you're probably the most, confidently, I won't say humble. I don't think you're a humble person, but you're the most confident person and just about you person that I've met, I think. You're definitely in the top three. I mean, I say that with praise, not I
appreciate
like a jab.
that.
Yeah.
I'm working on humility, so thank you. I am working on that. That's actually a very high compliment. Who are these other two people? We should probably not all hang out at once.
Well, the funny thing is the other two people I don't like, right? They're
Interesting.
They have the confidence level of kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's like me before therapy, probably.
Sure, yeah.
How I used to be. People used to be like, I don't think I like that person.
Oh, gotcha. I think I met you right when you started therapy, maybe.
Good.
Yeah. So it was a good time to meet you.
Or you were just drinking with me, and I'm a good time there.
That might have been it. Yeah. Just beat you at darts. But
Whoa.
I'll go that way. But no, I want to kind of start this off by asking you, because I think most people know you or maybe have heard of you as a copywriter, right? Like, oh, Ian, he's a copywriter, right? And in your book, you bring up a good point where it's once you have a label like that, people kind of associate that with something, you put it in a box. So I want to ask you, what do you label yourself as in this whole direct response world? Because I think you do a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, I found that it was hard to, when I used to just call myself a writer, I think whatever our identity is, we tend to do more of that thing. So whether that's you identify as a poor person, you tend to stay a poor person. If you identify as a fat person, you tend to stay a fat person. If you identify as being in shape, you tend to get in shape. And our subconscious moves us towards whatever we identify as. And when I was a writer, I wrote more. And when I stopped calling myself a writer, that was a weird part of it, was I stopped writing as much. But it was very good business-wise because it felt so limiting. I felt like I was in this tiny little box, you're a copywriter, that's what you're like. Well, I also, the first video I ever did, I drank toilet water and it went, wildly viral and sold a bunch of water filters. And then I did these parody videos and I, did everything for the email lists and did all these, and created products and did all these different things. So I found myself feeling like, okay, well, you can label me as a copywriter, but I've done all this other stuff. So it was Michael, it was Hollis and Michael. This is a person I know very well. This is the concussion. I can't remember his last name. Baby Bathwater.
Oh, yeah.
How can let's say his last name for him. This is insane. I know him so well.
Oh gosh, I'm blanking it too.
If he watches this, he's going to just rip me apart. I had a concussion 10 days ago. I'm going to blame it. It's just going to pop up in a minute. But they actually came up with this idea of a persuasion hit squad. And so I started from there calling myself the persuasion hitman. And as douchey as that may seem, but it's sort of even on the back cover of the book and on the sales page for the book as well. It's people want to put you in a box. They want to label you as something. And when you're put into that box, you're compared to everybody who's come before you. So if you're a copywriter, you can charge what a copywriter charges. You can, do the things that a copywriter does. And you also are labeled into all the mistakes that copywriters have made in the past. So when you're a persuasion hitman, you're in your own category. And when you create your own category, you're first and you can charge whatever the fuck you want. And that was sort of the big part of that. But that is where I started. That was the first skill I developed online, was copywriting.
So you're just kind of writing long form copy for different offers?
The first thing I ever wrote was, technically I guess my junior year of college, I wrote a book on how to pick up women, and emotionally, not physically. It wasn't
I think everyone gets what
okay,
that means.
I just wanted to make sure that people weren't confused.
Start with the legs.
A leg and an arm. You want to equally distribute weight, and then a whipping motion.
Oh, it's a clean and jerk.
Yeah, exactly. There was a section on that in the book as well. We can get that part out of here. I don't know if that's a corporate podcast type of joke. But anyways, I wrote that, and then I wrote some emails for a couple of guys while I was actually in Brazil for a month playing tennis down there in between junior and senior year. And I got paid $1,100 to write something like 300 emails. I got $5 an email was what I got paid. And then my senior year, my buddy bought some Bing ads, and I wrote this little pre-sale page, which I didn't even know it was called copy still. I just wrote this little story about what I'd learned from like violence and self-defense training and women basically, and it linked to the Dow Badass, a ClickBank product.
Yeah.
And I made my first ever sale on the Dow Badass. I remember where I was in my apartment my senior year, and it was $113.84, and I just went sprinting through my apartment, literally put a broom between my legs like I was riding a horse, and I was just amped. There's nothing like the first sale. It's just because it's all of the hope of the future without any comparison to your past. Because I remember like the first day we had a $10,000 day with my fixed water company, I was like, oh cool, whatever though, I've done more than this before. And I was like, wait, no, celebrate this. You've done more than this with, a company you worked at, not your own business. And so it's important to learn to celebrate. But we actually, I was with Dom last week, and we were saying, I feel like you guys should send out a check for each person's first sale. Even if they want direct deposit, you send them a check, because that check is like,
it's tangible,
it's
right?
real.
It's like this thing.
You're like, oh my God, I can make money online. This is a real thing. I know that there's all these people online who apparently did it, and I actually can do it now. And then I thought I was going to be, rich right away. It took a little longer, but I remember getting that like second sale was during a midterm in college, and I walked out and I checked my phone, and I had another $113.84. People were taking the upsell, and I was just like, all these losers are going to go get jobs, and I'm just going to be rich. But I really did think, I was like, I just got paid to take a test. I wasn't working. And that was an awesome feeling.
It was like, it felt like passive income, if you will. Yeah.
And that's what everything's been about for me, is that how can I do work once and get paid on it forever? Or how can I do as little as possible and make as much as possible? Really, it was about, I don't want to be present.
Would you say it's like getting paid for your results you're driving, not for the effort you put into it a bit?
Absolutely. It's that and the performance. And then really it was about not being present. I didn't want to have to be there to get paid, because I was coaching tennis in summers and then also after college, and I was getting $70 to $100 an hour at 22 is good money. But if I wasn't on the court, I wasn't getting paid.
Gotcha.
And so it was about developing, and that's where I took a job making $20 an hour writing email copy and VSLs. And I was willing, you'd think, why would you take a $20 an hour job when you're making 70 to 100 an hour on a court?
I've taught tennis too, and I totally get why you do that. Yeah,
it's exhausting. Well, I looked around, and all the 35 and 45-year-old guys were tired. They were wrinkly.
In the sun all day. Yeah.
They were in the sun all day. And if it
Mm-hmm.
rained, you don't get paid. If housewife number 3 had too many vodka tonics last night, you didn't get paid. If the little kid just didn't want to play today, you didn't get paid. And it was really, though, just I could already make as much as they were. I saw the glass ceiling, and I was like, I'm not going to be distracted by this. And so I took a $20 an hour job and learned a skill, and then that skills turned into, a lot more money.
I love it. Let's dive a bit into your past, and then I guess for people that don't know you, what's your accent?
Oh, that's worth saying, because people probably haven't heard a word I've said. They're like, "Where is this guy from?
Yeah.
Where is this weird accent?"
Is he South African?
Is he South African? I'm half English and half American, which means everyone thinks I'm Australian.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even Aussies are like, "Mate, so good to see you here. What brought you over here to Boise, mate?" Actually, I don't think I've met any Aussies here. I don't think they've come here. I think for some reason this is like a secret. They're all in like Vancouver.
Yeah, my mom's Australian.
all
She's up in North Idaho, and she's like the only one I've met. Yeah.
Your mum?
My mom. Yeah.
She's Australian?
Yeah, she's born in Sydney. She grew up in Auckland though, so she's got more of a Kiwi accent. Yeah.
You never told me this.
Yeah, I did. We were just drinking, but yeah.
You probably did.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'll blame my memory. I couldn't even remember.
You're concussed. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm concussed.
Nice. So, right, you mentioned like your $5. You got paid $5 per email. You're writing now. Gosh, when's the last time you got paid to write an email, and how much was that?
Well, I try not to do straight up getting paid for other people, but it was $1,500 per email plus $5,000 as a bonus if it beat the control of what I was writing. So a lot more.
Yeah, and I ask you that not to like let you brag, but just to kind of highlight that. Right, you're sought after for your copy, but more so for the results you're driving with that copy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that email took me, like, I remember the last one I wrote for somebody else. It took me literally 7 minutes to write it, and I made $6,500 from it. And they don't care. Like,
right.
And the best clients when I was freelancing, and this is a lot of what I teach now in a Like I basically mainly teach people how to manage other people's lists and write emails for other companies because it's such an easy way to get started making money. Even all these people on ClickBank, there's so many people making sales that aren't following up properly, but I made that much, and I would ask clients, I said, do you care how much I work, or do you care how much I make you? And if they ever said, nobody ever did, but if they said, well, I care how much time you put in, I'd go, cool, we're not supposed to work together. I don't care. I just want to win.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I like winning.
I like winning. Yeah. I mean, if you can
And
drive
I want to
someone.
get paid more. And I also tell them, I say, I will do the bare minimum if there's no incentive.
Yeah. No, I'm a sales guy. I totally get that. Right. It's like, okay, you want me to do that? Sure. But
if your incentive is to just not get fired, that's a bad incentive.
Yeah.
People are like,
Yeah,
well, I just do
exactly.
it so I don't get fired. It's like, that's a bad incentive.
No, 100%. I wanted to ask, like, for the offer owners that are out there that are maybe, let's say they're having some success, right? Like maybe a couple hundred sales a day, maybe less, right? But they're still haven't cracked like big scale that a lot of these guys can do in the space. And maybe they know that copy is where they really need to focus, whether it's top of funnel like ads or even headlines and that kind of thing. If they're looking to hire copywriters and work with, let's say they can't afford a top tier copywriter, right? And they don't have the cash to put down, 5 figures up front, just kind of get them on the deck and kind of
Right.
work with them. How do you kind of help people like that? Or how would you suggest they go forward to work with the right kind of copywriter to get them results?
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a few different types of copywriters. There's kind of like 3 different places. There's kind of like the beginner who, when you take somebody new, you're taking a risk, obviously. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But sometimes you get really lucky and you get somebody really good for really cheap. And it's unlikely, but it's possible. That happened for me. The first people that hired me, like, I was just obsessive and I did well, and they were paying me $20 an hour. And I was generating, hundreds of thousands per month, right off the bat. And so you've got kind of that, and then you've got this middle area where people are charging maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000. And there, it's very hit or miss. Like, some of these people are just not very good, and some of them are really good and they're undercharging. So that's where you can kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. And then you've got, if I'm freelancing, there's me, there's Steph and Georgie, there's, David Deutsch and Paris Lampropoulos, and these guys who, are going to charge 25 to 50 grand up front plus, some back end. And a lot of people can't afford that. They also think they can't afford it, but it's an investment. And if, like, the way I structure my deals, and this is for the copywriters out there and for the business owners to talk to copywriters, find a way to create a win-win deal where there's less risk up front for the business owner, more payoff for the copywriter, because the copywriter really doesn't have risk other than their time. And if you can give them an incentive based on results, and it doesn't have to be royalties and stuff. It doesn't have to be monthly residuals. Like, for the most part, those don't work. Because
Why don't they work?
They don't work because most relationships in life break down because of resentment. And resentment only breeds when you don't deal with things before or as they arise. So resentment gets built because this company's going, they wrote this shit 6 months ago, and I keep sending them money. And so John Carlton said something really smart. He said, if you do royalties, make sure that the accounting department's separate from the marketing department. Because if they're just writing your check and the marketing and the business owner isn't seeing it, he's like, I have a client who's been paying me for 12 years. I don't think the main people even know. Because it's just getting, pushed out like that. Yeah. It's like companies like Agora who are big enough and have a royalty system, sure, go ahead. But the thing is, then somebody like me or somebody else comes along and beats your control and you stop getting paid. So I like to do flat fee stuff where it's like they can very clearly say, if it makes this many sales, it gets this percentage increase, I'm going to pay you this much. That's how you can get a great copywriter without all the risk up front, because you say, hey, I'll pay you $5,000 up front. Once we hit 100,000 in sales, I'll pay you another $5,000. Once we get to 150, another $5,000, 200, another $5,000. So there's 20 grand in it for you, and you get to, watch your cash flow. And that's sort of the advantage I had is, or at least at this point, and I really don't freelance much at all, but having been a business owner as well as a copywriter, I get to understand both sides. Because copywriters go, well, I generated $1 million in sales. I'm like, yeah. And you generated, 25,000 in profit off that first million because you don't realize how much is going into making that work at this point. So you have to understand the numbers from both sides. I think that's one of the best ways to do it, is structure deals that delay the cash flow but give them, that protect your cash flow so that you don't have to put 50,000 out right away, but you may be willing to, I was just ask, would you pay if I said, give me $50,000 today and I'll give you $2 million in 60 days? Well, yeah, of course.
Right.
I'm saying that's what I'm going to do. So, but if you can delay it and make the deal sort of impossible to refuse, it'll work. And then the other thing is to go to people who have groups of copywriters that you can actually trust. Like, I have a group of, really legit copywriters who I can vouch for. Justin Goff and Stephen Georgie do. Like, you're much better off going there where you're also going to potentially get it chiefed by somebody good. Like, I had a student yesterday who wrote an email for VShred,
Nice.
and I came up with a pretty great thing. And if you see what color is your fat,
that's you
out there, that'll have been mine. But like, he's getting that idea from me, and he's paying, they're going to pay him whatever they pay him instead of paying me. And so you can get that advantage of kind of getting the higher end person. I don't say that because I'm arrogant and I'm the best. I'm just saying you're going to somebody with a lot of experience and getting somebody for a lot cheaper, but still getting some of that person's mind share.
I like it because you're structuring it in a way, right, where you're almost paying a royalty, but you're structuring it where there's a cap with it, but you also get them on the hook, so to speak, the copywriter, to be engaged with you through that growth and continued testing process, right? Because it's like, okay, if I can help them get another 100, there's $5,000 in it for me, right?
Well, it really aligns you both.
Yeah.
Like, I always say is, I'd like to win kind of big when you win really big. So, another way is like, I'll just take 1,000 per % increase, or 2,000 or 3, whatever it is per percentage increase, because they know.
So you're tying it to a result.
They know their numbers. They know if I can get them a 30% lift, that's worth an extra $2 million this year. So would they pay me $30,000 for $2 million? Of course, all day, every day. And it's just making the numbers work in that way. And another thing to do is, whether it's a copywriter talking to the business owner, or, and for ClickBank offer owners and stuff, is just saying, hey, what's a deal that's, if you guys can't seem to come to an agreement, if it's the deal that seems to be the problem, just ask what would be fair and exciting for you. And then if you don't like it, say no. But then sometimes they come back, and sometimes you let somebody else give you the deal, and they come back and you're like, wow, they're going to pay me way more than I was going to ask for. I should have done this more often.
You start to see what your value is actually worth, right? Nice. You've done an interesting thing where I think you layer in humor in a way into a lot of your, what I can tell from like your top of funnel campaigns with ads and things like that, all the way down through your copy. Is humor to you something that any brand you think can leverage or should be leveraging, or do you think it has to be like a personal brand, or it has to be the right type of product?
I think it can be anyone. I think funny's funny. Like, I do stand-up as well, and people say, oh, that's a hacky joke, or that's a gimmicky joke, or whatever, and you have people who think that way. And there are jokes that just seem easy, and it's like, okay. It's more as if it's been done too many times, or if that's the only thing you've got is like talking about one thing. It's like, I get it. You just did 40 minutes on this one specific part about yourself. It's like, it was really funny for 5 minutes. It's old now. But the reality is funny is funny. If people are laughing, then that's good, even if it's a cheap laugh or it's a joke or puns. I've got a gut supplement brand that I just launched, and I'm going to do more of the, proper poopery, unicorn poop type of thing, because people apparently love poop jokes. Like, they love them. Like, any poop puns are just incredible. And our tagline's gonna be, get your shit together, literally. And it's called Choose Gut Health. And so we've got all these jokes, I can do around chewing and around, all these different things, but you can make it fun. It's a very serious thing, because even in the VSL, it's just me telling my story, a lot of it, and then sort of talking about the ingredients and why they work so well and where they come from. But this product genuinely changed my life. And so there's a very emotional story of me losing 30 pounds, having diarrhea. I can't even say that in the sales letter for whatever purpose, but I had diarrhea 9 times a day. I was in constant pain, and that's a very emotional, serious story. But if I can use something comedic to bring them there, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to watch something serious now. I find, and this is something sort of weird that I do, and I didn't do it on purpose when I started, but it's sort of my personality in general. 95% of the time, I'm very laid back, fun, don't really care about, just relaxed. And then 5% of the time, I'm a competitive psychopath who does a lot of weird physical challenges and have a weird level of pushing myself, and played sports my whole life. And so my whole personality is kind of this duality of laid back and humorous, and then one of the most intense people you've ever met. And not a lot of people see the intense guy, but when I wrote my the first book, Confessions of a Persuasion Hitman, the first line in the book is, I thought I was going to kill people for a living. And the first part of that story, there's nothing funny about it. It's a very intense story. And then the second chapter is about me stealing lemons and making lemonade and exploiting my grandmother for labor and, and all this stuff. And it's quite a funny story. And so what I've found is, and I do this when I speak as well as I'll like open up joking around or I'll open up very serious and then start joking around. And I wondered if it would work. I'm like, can people go from laughing to serious? And what I find is the more intense the swing of emotion is, the more they actually buy stuff and the more of a connection they create. Because if you're sort of in this middle ground, there's not a lot of emotion happening. And emotion gets rid of logic and people buy on emotion and then they justify with logic. So if I can get them out of their mind and into their feelings, they're much more likely to buy stuff. And so I'm writing a new book right now, and I just wrote the intro last night, and it's about when I got mugged, and it's a very intense story. And it's like, okay, well, this book, you would not think a comedian wrote the intro of this book. Then I go, well, can I add in humor down here and there? And if there's places for jokes and for lightheartedness, absolutely. And what I've found is, especially in writing and in sales videos, if you can just get people to do the nose breathe laugh.
No, just the snort. Let's do that more into our podcast, Max. Yeah. It's going to sound great.
Does that sound good? If you can just get that out of somebody in an email or something, there's a little dopamine release and it separates you from everybody else because most people aren't funny in writing.
Well, gosh, I mean, you've probably seen the same trend, right? A lot of these high volume sales letters start very heavy, right? It's a very big emotional pull.
I'm partially to blame for that, I think, with my first line stuff.
Yeah, right. It just sucks you in. It's just like a big emotional story. Like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen here? In those types of funnels, is there room for humor? Like, and if so, where?
I think there is. I think sometimes I've found when I'm not, I can get lazy with it, where if I just put in a little effort to add in a tiny little analogy here, a little joke here, one or two in an email or in a sales letter, like little parentheses that make some little joke, it transforms the entire thing because you separate yourself from almost everyone. Even a lot of great writers can't be funny. They think they can't be funny, right? Everybody can be funny. But it's intense or it's serious or they think that it's one thing. But the more you dimensionalize any piece of writing or sales letter, the more, like, there's 8 core emotions that humans feel. I want people to feel as many of those as possible in a sales letter or in a book or in an email, because the more they feel, the more the logic gets shut off and the more they're not. It's like when I don't know if you have this, but when I got super obsessed with marketing and ads, I would watch ads from the perspective of a salesperson and be like, I'm studying them, right? And there's still it's hard to turn that part of your brain off. But there'd be times where I start studying one and then I notice like a minute later, I'm just consuming this ad.
Right. You're like, oh,
and
this
I'm
is
like,
good.
what just happened?
And now you're like, wait.
Something just happened because I just got emotionally pulled into this. So I think there's space for it. I think it's got to be tasteful. There's times that people try and just do outlandish stuff to try and be
shock
funny.
and awe almost, or slapstick.
Yeah, and it's like they're trying to be polarizing to be funny, and it's like they're just shocking and it's not actually funny. But I think there are places like, even in, I don't know if I have anything funny in my gut and the Choose Gut Health VSL, but I'll make little just tiny playful jokes or things, or even messing up on camera. I think is one of the best things you can do, is not correcting every piece, because people aren't attracted to perfect people. I think the greatest gift of being human is the gift of imperfection. We're supposed to fuck shit up. That's why we're here. What is the first thing Eve did in the Garden of Eden? God's like, dude, he's like, you guys, this is the best garden ever. There is so much good stuff here. I mean, it's amazing. Look at this thing. People are going to talk about this garden forever. Just don't touch an apple. She's like, it's great, but
the snake says it's awesome.
I want that apple. Apple's not even that good, man. And she takes the apple. And the reason for that and why that's common amongst different religions and stuff, that there's some mistake, is because that's why we're here. We're human. We're supposed to make mistakes. And people are attracted to the rough edges of us, to the stories, to the flaws, to the broken pieces. So when you try to be perfect and you show this incredibly polished thing, it's like a used car salesman. We all have that same vibe. Or the guy, oh, but wait, there's more. Right, and it's like, the more popular stuff is like QVC, where people are messing up and ladders are falling on them and there's mistakes happening.
Well, I think like, yeah, if you look at like, Billy Mays or something, some of the greatest salesmen on TV and things like that, they don't look, like a great salesperson almost. Billy Mays, he's a little frumpy, he's this middle-aged bearded guy. Like, it's like there's something charming about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
it's the naturalness. It's like, this is a person.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like even a great actor. Like, I've been watching different Kevin Costner stuff lately, and he's so good. And like, I don't know if you've ever seen Tin Cup. It's a great movie. And
of course I've seen Tin Cup. Yeah.
It stands up, by the way. I was wondering if it was still going to be good. It's so good. But when you watch Kevin Costner, you're like, I just believe him. Because he doesn't seem like an actor. He seems like the person he is, which is what you're supposed to do. Right? Yeah. Well, when he's playing that sort of, mobile park golf guy, you're like, I believe him as that person. I don't think I'm watching an actor play a role. I think I'm watching him be that person.
Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey talked about that in his book. He went to an acting class, and they were like, he started to think too much, and he was like, just be your man, just be the character, be the thing, become what that is. And I think that's, people can feel that instead of that little layer of like, I'm on camera now, this is my camera voice, I'm gonna be different.
Yeah, no, gosh, this reminds me of a story with I had a friend in the industry, and they decided to kind of rip Emily Lark's offer, right? They're like, oh, this is crushing it, they're doing so well, we're gonna do what she's doing but better. And they hired someone that looked a lot like Emily. They bought out a studio to go film in, funnel hack the script, if you will. Probably wasn't that hack, probably more just copy pasted. Mm-hmm. And it bombed. Like, it didn't do well at all.
Yeah.
And you could just look at the two of them and just feel this like sheen to it, right? It just didn't feel like Emily's offer felt. On the face of it, it looked a little better, it looked a little more polished, but it just didn't connect.
It's that right? It's that authentic. The cool thing about authenticity is you can't fake it. Mm-hmm. People try very hard, but at the end they'll either be exposed or they'll be or I'll make a parody of it. These people that are just, you're like, how are people buying this person? Shit, this is such garbage. But like, Emily's got, I know one of her VSLs did well. She was just like, yeah, I just filmed it on my phone in my living room.
Yeah.
And I just was talking. And it's like, yeah, you can't fake that part. You can't recreate the person who, it's the same thing. You could take, I'm sure, numerous of Billy Mays offers, have somebody else go on camera, and it wouldn't have worked.
Right, with the exact same script, right?
Same script, same words. It's like, I can record the same script, have a different energy, and get different results. Like, literally, mathematically, tested results different based on the energy that I come in with. People are like, you can't use energy in copy. Don't talk about woo-woo shit like energy. I'm like, well, how you feel, and this is the same with writing, it's all a transference of energy. How you feel on camera is going to get pushed through to the person. If you're having a good time, like I've been with stand-up, I had my first set a few weeks back that I didn't really have fun. And the whole set, I just didn't have a great time. And I was like, oh, that's not why I do this to the next set. I went up, I've been doing these jokes about Mormons, which is politically correct right now. Nobody seems to be bothered by it. Yeah, it's a great audience for it. But I just went up on stage, I didn't write material, and just went, I'm going to have a great time. And people had a great time. It's like, if you can get on camera or write, whether it's painful, if you're writing about painful stuff, get into your pain. Whatever you're feeling, they're going to feel. So the more you can feel when you're writing or filming, the more the people watching and reading are going to feel.
If you're like an offer owner hiring a copywriter, how can you get them the right material to help them get into that space and get you better copy?
If you're the offer owner and you want the copywriter to,
I guess, if you're working with copywriters, right? Like, what do you need as a copywriter to kind of help get to that level? Do you just do all the research yourself? Do you need materials from the client to kind of help you get to a certain point? Like,
the best thing to get from the offer owner is like the testimonial stories and like the video versions of those, because you can see the people who have the feeling in it, and also then you can put those into the VSL. Testimonials are super useful because then you can write in the language of the people that actually have used the product. The thing that I typically do is I'll just go look for an emotional story online that may not be about the product, but relates to what I'm going to be selling. Like a sales letter I wrote that has sold a ton of a $2,000 solar generator. The first line is, John didn't know he was going to die that night. And the story is about a guy who lit a candle during the blackout in New York City, and his trailer park, his mobile home caught on fire and he died. And then another guy who had a generator and the gas leaked out and he died from carbon monoxide. He was prepared, and it's just this emotional story that had nothing to do with the solar generator. But it was about electricity and energy and about, these sad deaths, and then it led into the rest of the sales letter. And I found that story myself. And I did one for another survival thing, and I found these two guys who got stuck on a boat that went like 3,000 miles from where they went. They went on an island. One of them survived, the other one didn't. The difference was one literally was willing to drink turtle blood. The other wasn't. It's who is willing to survive. And so you can find these stories online, but it's up to, if you're the offer owner, you want to give them as much ammo as you can, like as much cannon fodder as possible. And then as the copywriter, it's your job to go and do all the research you can to find obscure stories and random things that somebody else hasn't found, like unique and interesting. Like, don't be boring. The more unique things you find, the more it's going to stand out and people are going to remember it.
I love that. Yeah. Let's dig into a little bit with storytelling, because I think that's one of your strengths, right? It's like in all the copy, all the emails I get from you and like kind of everything I see put online, it's most of them I'm going to say are based around a story. Do you have a way that, like, gosh, I think we can all think of a friend, right, who's just great at telling stories, that can just kind of like rattle something off at the top of your head and just flows naturally. People laugh at the right spots. Like, I've always been super jealous of that. Like, do you have something, is it natural for you, or when you're writing copy, do you have like a structure you try to follow?
Yeah. Dan Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
That just made me laugh because Dan always says that he's got this friend who's a better storyteller than me, and he just does it to piss me off. He'll literally write an email to his whole list, and he'll put in one line, and he'll even say, "This is just to piss off one of my friends." Shout out to Dan Ferrari. He's a great copywriter and human being. I'm actually talking to him tonight, but he's a good storyteller as well. I would say the first thing is learn how to not tell a story. And
I'm great at that. Yeah.
I learned that from my father. My dad's this big 6'4", 220-pound, like just athletic, very. You think I'm confident? I got it from this guy. He walks into a room, and I mean, literally, we would be in rooms with, it's like Wayne Gretzky, and it's these incredibly rich people that he was, never made more than $90,000 a year, and he didn't give a fuck because he's the best tennis player there, and he just walks into a room and commands the room, and he's got very interesting stories, but the way he tells stories can ruin these great stories, because he's like, we were out there with, he's the English one, we were out there with, I was there with Veronica. Actually, was it Susan? Or was it, who was it? I go, do I know her? No. Well, then I don't care. Just pick a name.
Right, yeah.
And he goes, all right. Well, it was Tuesday. Oh, it could have been Wednesday, couldn't it? Or was it Saturday? Oh, well, and you're like, oh my God, these details are not important. And that was the most important thing I learned, is get rid of the details that don't matter, and get to the point. Now, what's interesting is literally last night, I'm in this group now. Neil Strauss is helping people go through writing a book, and so I paid quite a bit of money to be in this, and last night we worked on my intro, and what was interesting to see is a lot of these writers didn't set the scene well. And these aren't necessarily writers, like, I'm a writer, this is what I do professionally, so it's a little different being in a group with non-writers, or some of them are, but they kind of skip these people. You don't know where they are in the story. You're like, well, where are you? Where is this? And the first lines I had is, I was walking to a train station from a tennis academy in London. It was a dark, wet night, as it usually is. I was, going up I'm literally setting the scene. I'm telling you where I was. The first line is, when I was 15 years old, 5 men stole my freedom. And it's, how old I was. What's going on. So set the scene, but, you don't have to talk about, what I hate about like certain fiction novels and stuff is like, a candle flickered in the wind 20 miles away. Like that doesn't affect the story. Does it affect the story if I tell you that bottles and trash blew across the floor where I was standing? Yes. But all this superfluous, as a tree miles away whispered in your ear with the wind, and the breath went down your neck. It's like, that's not relevant to the story. Whereas when I say that the first mugger yelled at my face and I could feel his hot breath in the cold air, like that's different. That's relevant to the story. Now you know how close he is. So give details that are relevent to the story itself.
The show don't tell model, right?
Yeah. And really the best, and actually it's funny because Neil said this yesterday, but I started writing a screenplay a while ago, and I'll put it out here so when it's on Netflix, you guys can be like, oh my God, I heard about it on ClickBank's podcast. What am I going to hear about on here next? but it's called Killing, and it's about a comedian who kills on stage, and he also kills people.
The Dexter of comedians.
And it's basically,
Yeah.
it's like if Dexter and Seinfeld intercoursed each other and birthed this show, is sort of how I think about it. And then you had a sort of Australian guy playing the lead character. But I wrote the opening scene, and I didn't know how to write a screenplay because it's quite technical. There's a whole skill of writing screenplays. So all right, well, I don't want that to stop me. So all I did is let me write the most visual representation of what I see in my mind. Let me just be as visual with this as possible. And I did this last night with the intro to the new book. I just went, let me explore everything as what I see. That's what great books do, right? You see everything. You're seeing, like when you're reading Harry Potter, and yeah, I'm going to call that a great book because they are, you see everything. Right before the movies came out, you could see all the pictures. You created imagery of all these characters and everything in your mind. So think in pictures, not in words. Like, how can you use these words to create intense pictures?
Vivid pictures in
and
someone's mind.
You know, and there's little tips there of like, you know, her feet pitter-pattered into the room, right? She patted into the room.
You can picture how she's actually walking.
That's the Chris
to do
Haddad
that,
stuff
right?
he always does, you know. It's how did they walk? It's the specifics of those things that create that image of, you know, how they were actually moving or what they were doing. It's not he got angry. It's his fists clenched and his face turned red, right? That creates the picture. So that's one part of it. And then a big part is basically anytime you're telling stories, all you're doing is building and releasing tension. That's, if you want to break it down to two very simple things, you're building tension and you're releasing tension. So is this part of the story building tension, or is it releasing it? And before you release tension, preferably you open a loop that builds tension for later so people have to keep reading. That one of the biggest things with copy and with VSLs and with, you know, a lot of ClickBank offers. I remember there was a big ClickBank offer, this must have been like 5 years ago, and another friend of mine, they had it transcribed and they counted the open loops, and it was like 150 open loops.
And probably like a 40-minute VSL? Yeah.
30 or 40. It was I think it was Wesley Virgin's, the gunshot.
Oh,
ran by
M16
my
in my face.
and,
Yeah, that one.
Mm-hmm. You know,
my briefcase that never comes back in this. Yeah.
I could never keep watching after the very start, but it's like it's all the there's that many open loops. So, you know, relying on true storytelling methods like an open loop is basically, people try and make it this fancy Hollywood sexy thing. All it is you're asking a question in the reader's mind and you're not answering it right now. If you want to see the best simple open loop telling, it's in How I Met Your Mother, which is like my go-to go to sleep show, like simple show. All they do is he goes, but more on that later. That's the simplest thing. If you want to just get pretty good at copy and opening loops, is you just say, but I'll answer that later. First, let me tell you my own story. Before I get to that, or I'll talk about that in 8 years. That show should not be called How I Met Your Mother. It should be called Everyone I Had Sex With Before Your Mother.
Yes.
He should not be telling these stories to his children. They're ridiculous. I just watched from the other night. He's just talking about how good cigarettes are. Yeah, like, this is a terrible message.
It's the writer's not really knowing how he met the mother. It's like, wait, okay.
Yeah, they didn't know.
They're just like building.
We're
going to
put this little thing here and then whatever, and it's like, it's not about meeting her. We don't learn about her till the last season.
Yeah, and then they just cobble something together and go there.
Yeah, and you're kind of like,
just ship it.
It was fine.
That's a good example, also.
But you don't have to be super fancy. Don't let all of this imagery and all this stuff, you know, overwhelm you. One of the best facets of storytelling is writing at a third grade level and making your shit easy to read. Because there were also, it's funny timing you asked me this, just because last night I got to see different examples of other writers, and some of you can tell that they're trying to write. They're like, the flames were bellowing in my mother's belly, and you're like, I get that you're trying to write, but you're not going anywhere. It's like watching Brazilian kids play soccer. You're like, I get it. You're doing all these tricks. Cool. You didn't go anywhere. You're in the same spot you started. Did it look cool? Sure. But I'm actually getting down the field, buddy. Like, do something. Move the ball forward. It's just like, it's all flash and no stake. That's not the right phrase.
I think that you put this in your book, right? What's the point of the headline? Get them to read the next line. What's the point of the next line? Get them to read the next line, right? Bring them through the structure.
Yeah, it's not to sell the thing in the beginning. It's just to get them to keep reading. And I think actually it's funny because writing a book now, I'm writing it like a copywriter. I'm trying to get straight to the point. I'm like, I can actually build this scene a little more, because you got to realize when anybody hits a sales page, they're trying to leave.
Like, oh, shoot.
They're trying to leave, or in a small percentage of them are trying to really they're trying to be sold. And when you look at like a book, somebody's made a decision, and maybe they pick it up in a bookstore, not so much anymore, but they've decided to read the book. They're going to give you more of a chance. That doesn't mean be lazy, but in copy, if your first sentence is weak, you could have the best sales letter beneath that and people are leaving. So, don't open sales letters or videos with, hey, my name is so-and-so. Nobody gives a shit who you are until they know why you care about them and why they should keep watching.
No, I love that. Last thing I want to dive in with you before we wrap this up is I want to kind of talk a bit about the fixed water campaigns you did. Are they still out there that people can watch? Because I'd love to put them in the show notes.
I think if you still Google Ian Driggs toilet water,
you'll find something like that.
It.
Yeah.
I'm actually working with a new water. I sold fixed water a few years ago, and then I'm actually working with a new company coming up here we might bring back the old toilet water ad. So,
because I just want to frame it a bit, because I think people have heard of it or they've seen it, right? And it's essentially you going around and using the water filter, the fixed water filter. It's a straw filter, right? You kind of
there was a straw. We had a pitcher. We had bottles. Yeah, and the straw was our best seller at fixed, though.
Yeah, and you went around and you drank water out of puddles in the street, out of toilets in the LAX airport, right? All these like objectively
gross
disgusting places,
Yeah.
right? And I think on the front of it, people are like, oh, it's just shock and awe, right? But I'd love for you to peel back the layers a bit there on why that type of campaign works, not just from like a funny like shock level, but like what is actually happening when you show that kind of thing with a product.
Yeah, well, I thought the first video was funny. I was like, hey, I'm Ian, and I'm about to drink toilet paper, and it's like Jackass, right? I thought it was funny, and then I talked to Ron Lynch. It reminds me a lot of Ron's show Don't Tell, right? I met him because of that video. I was 25. I had done that video.
Oh, I thought you had worked with him and then came up with that campain or something. You did that before Ron.
I had never even been on camera other than I made one. I used to make videos with my friends as a kid, and then I didn't do anything on camera until I made this one video called the lifty table. Those silly coffee tables that lift up.
Yeah.
I did this stupid video with my roommate when I was in San Diego, and I had my arms in a shirt, and I was like, are your arms too short? Our table's too low. And it was this stupid fake infomercial for the lifty table. It's still, if you watch it, by the way, this is like the funniest testimonial of something sticking in someone's head. A student of mine was like, my daughter was singing 1-800-LIFTY table just this morning because of that. But I hadn't done any videos tonight, but the first time when I was at Crisis Education and we knew we were going to start selling this water pitcher, I said, oh, we should drink out of it. I said, how good are the filters or whatever? And they were like, they're really good. I was like, could I drink out of a toilet? They're like, well, yeah. And that was my first idea.
Gotcha.
And they were like, yeah, we're not going to do that, whatever. And then like a few months later, I convinced them to let me start doing stuff on camera. And that was the first video we filmed. It was on an iPhone. And the big thing, though, is this is one of the most important things for people to understand about demonstrations and about proof in your copy and in your VSLs. Is there's a difference between what I call deniable proof and undeniable proof. So there's another company I've done a lot of consulting for that had a water filter offer. And they would go, look, it can filter anything. And they would pour the stuff in the top of it, and then they would cut, and it would come out. And I'm like, that's like essentially the equivalent of shooting a basketball, seeing it go nowhere near the hoop, and then cutting, and it's a swish, swish. Like, we don't know what happened at the cut.
It's a Halle Berry Catwoman basketball scene.
You can't, exactly. you can't cut. If you cut once during a demonstration, you lose all of your validity. So instead of, if you've got a 20-minute demonstration you have to go through because it's time-lapsed, put an iPhone up on this, not like a virtual timer. I mean, literally set an iPhone in front of the camera.
Oh, with a timer going?
Hit the timer. Mm-hmm. Speed it up. You can see that this is real. Like, if you give somebody one little tiny ability to doubt what it is that you've just done, you lose everyone. You lose everything. So I view those type of ads and that type of proof as I look at it like I'm trying to figure out a magician's trick. And there's a great one of, I don't know if you've seen when David Blaine's with Ricky Gervais, and David Blaine has it's a magic trick, but really he's like, Ricky, doesn't it look like I'm putting this needle through my arm? And he goes, David, he said, what are you talking about? He said, that's not magic. That's just a fucking needle through your arm. And you go, you can't deny that's just a needle through his arm. And that's what he kind of did to magic. It's not magic. He's just putting a fucking needle through his arm.
Yeah.
And so I want that level of, you look at the trick from every angle and you go, this can't be a trick. He's actually doing this. And so in that first toilet water ad, if you go and find it, it's on an iPhone and there's not a single cut. And there's me going back into the, and I will say this, the guy who was in the toilet was staged.
Oh, sure.
He was from our company, but he looked like someone he didn't want to drink after. And we blurred his face, but he came out, but there's no cuts, because if there was one single cut in that video, all of the integrity is gone. So whenever you're going to do something with proof, like, you have to look at it from the perspective of, like, think of your worst friend or the most annoying guy who you never want to watch a movie with. That's not real.
Sure.
I don't want to, like, that just guy that you're like, oh my God, you're annoying. Do you ever just, like, enjoy things? Think of that guy. Think of that guy watching your video, trying to pick apart the problems. And that's what Billy Mays did so well, is they would, drive over stuff with cars, and they would do all these crazy demonstrations.
I've seen
to
like
the
a flex
point where
seal
you
of
go,
the boat now and
yeah,
stuff.
and
like,
you just
they're
go,
great.
okay,
Yeah.
that's real.
Yeah.
You can't, like, how much can you make it undeniable proof versus deniable proof? Because the difference between that can be $100 million company and $100 company. Like, literally, people buying in to the fact that something's real.
I love that. No, thank you, man. So you have a lot of things going on, right? I can never keep track of what you're actually doing. I'm like, what?
Me neither.
Yeah. It's like, what is he chasing right now? This is your chance maybe to do like a shameless plug, if you will, but I'm also just genuinely curious. Like, what is driving you forward right now? What are you excited about?
Yeah. Well, if I say all the things, I guess I'm writing a book called How to Get Lucky, and it's not about picking up women. It's about sort of decoding the scientific, like, people think of luck as one thing. It's just chance. But the reality is there's 7 types of luck, and we can actually affect our luck and the good things that happen to us by taking certain actions, which is just a really fun thing that I think it's weird, because everybody knows about luck, but nobody seems to understand it, and I somehow seem to ironically get lucky and figure it out. And then the main thing, so I have focused my life a lot more, and we now have the one main company. It's called Almost Passive Income. We help people make more money in less time while having more fun. And you can go and you can get my book. That's the best way to get on our list. It's Confessions of a Persuasion Hitman. It's persuasionhitman.com. Don't buy it on Amazon. Buy it on my site, because then you'll get my emails and see everything. Or you can just go to feedthewolf.com to opt in. I'm on the Instagram at Becoming Ian Stanley. And then I do have the gut supplement company, which is the chewable supplement that changed my life. I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease a few years back, and it totally changed my life. So basically, the passive income, almost passive income business, gut health, and then stand-up's really the biggest thing that I'm making. I did 3 sets last week. I'm going to make Boise.
Do you just go like to Liquid down here?
Liquid closed 3 days after I moved here.
Oh, that's right.
And talk about poetic irony.
The only comedy club in Boise. Yeah. Where do you do stand-up then?
Mad Swede downtown, and then Eastside Tavern. It's like a minute and a half from my house.
When I come out of my house from this COVID hole I'm in, I'll definitely come see you.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a good time. But really, putting stand-up first, and just making silly videos. Been doing a lot on YouTube, but yeah, I'm partnered with Cam now. Mm-hmm. As you know, my business partner used to work for ClickBank, so we're my first ever sale was at ClickBank.
Oh, no way. I love that.
Cam, used to work at ClickBank, and so that's the main stuff. That's, I'm doing better. I used to have like 4 or 5 companies at once, and I learned that doesn't work.
So you've only got 2 or 3?
Let's call it 2.
2.5.
Technically, there's one that's the consulting company, the LLC, but it's really 2 companies.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
that's it. And one of them's 90% of my focus, and that was the biggest thing that changed my income and everything last year, was just saying no to almost everything and going, let's just do one thing really well. And if you look at, to sort of tie this together from a ClickBank perspective, there are people who are affiliates who are trying to sell this product and that product and all these different things and doing a ton of different things at once. And then you've got the guys who just pick an offer, blow up that offer, and keep optimizing that.
And even they'll pick a traffic source, they'll pick an offer, right? And they'll just like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Not like, oh, I tried this one tactic here and that tactic there. Gosh,
just
exhausting.
Keep working on that one thing, because what I've always had a problem with is we'll get one funnel working right away, and Cam will joke about this, but it's weird, because pretty much everything I've put out, I've never had something not work. And so what that means is I go, oh, we'll make it even better later, but it works well enough that we don't even go back to fix it. And then I go, well, new funnel time, new product. Yeah. And so we have 45 products. And last year I went, I'm not allowed to create new products right now. We're just doing this one, and we're going to blow this one up, and that's our focus. So from a ClickBank perspective, even just becoming a super affiliate for one product, like, you don't have to constantly chase all these different offers and all this different stuff. Just the more focused you get, the more you can say, no to the shiny objects, the faster things are going to grow for you.
I love that. Thanks, man. So I listened to your book, read through it this last week. I don't know why I hadn't before. I think it was just my hubris. I'm like, I'm not going to read Ian's book.
I know Ian. I don't need his book. Yeah, I don't need his book.
It's really good. I actually got a lot out of it.
I appreciate that.
So you can get that at persuasionhitman.com.
Yep.
And then feedthewolf.com.
If you want to just go opt in and you don't want to give me money yet, then just
that's what I did first. I just got your emails from feedthewolf.com for ages, and they're great too. You can just kind of get a
I share the same stuff with free people and buyers. I like to treat everybody the same. It's that's not even me trying to be politically correct. I just think people are equal. And what I love about going through someone's funnel like yours, right, who's a good copywriter and funnel and offer builder, if you will, inherently, is just to go through and see how you're structuring whatever offer you have on your site, right, and then go through your upsell sequence and just see how you're positioning it. I love, just to tease it a bit, like my dog's sad, right? Like, you saw that.
Like all the little videos you go through, because I downsold a few times, and it's like, how much
sunny side up.
Keep this up. It's clever.
I have exploited my dog a little bit in my videos, but I've spent insane amounts of money on him and insane amounts of time with him, and he's got to pay for himself somehow.
Awesome. Well, Ian, thank you for joining. Ian, not Ian. Excited to see what you keep doing in the future, and thanks for hopping on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's fun. Awesome. Bye, camera lens.
Happy scaling.